Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill Namen's Bogus Hangout. I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves. Kim,
Hi,
can you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Kim Krausberg. I'm an accessibility certified accessibility specialist and usability specialist for Creative Vision Web Consulting.
Doc,
Doc Sheldon of Intrinsic Value SEO.
Terry,
Terry Van Horn, SEO Pros.
and I'm Bill Slosky of SEO by the Sea, and I'm the Director of SEO Research at Go Fish Digital. And welcome to the show. I know we have some questions within the panel here today. I know Kim has one. So Kim, what are you concerned about?
I was asked this, and during my talk for a search engine journal, and I was asked, is accessibility a ranking factor for Google's web core? And I don't see how it could be, but I wanted your thoughts on that.
I've seen a lot of articles by SEOs that talk about accessibility and how it can help with search engine optimization for pages, including things like alt tags, alt elements on images, helps the search engine understand what those images are about. Now, the search engines are getting smarter about understanding what's in images. They're actually spending the computational expense of trying to understand what the objects in images might be, what they're doing. And you've got programs like Chrome browser, which is automatically, you can turn it on and it'll generate alt text for images that it shows in the browser. Whether or not it'll do that for a search engine is another question, and something that none of them have answered. So Google doesn't tell us it can do that. I've seen
there
patents.
Is an actual alt decision tree to help with that. See, this is where I start to panic, because you can't automate a lot of this stuff. And when my clients say, oh, I can just run it through something and it will figure out what my images are, and I'm like, there are so many other factors involved with this. And
so Google does have patents where they talk about how they're analyzing objects in images and understanding them better. They're creating their own knowledge graphs based on what they see in images. So, for instance, they might have a knowledge graph about bears, and they might understand that bears often hunt every day, and they hunt in rivers, and they hunt for fish. And they can tell us that without ever reading a Wikipedia article about bears. They can say, we've learned this from looking at pictures of bears, of grizzly bears, of polar bears. We know they like salmon. They like salmon a lot. They'll jump in the middle of a stream to catch them. And they're using quotations from videos, because they used to use quotations from knowledge bases, and they said, well, most of the time people look for a quote from a video, they want to actually see the person who said it saying it. They want to watch the video. So if we analyze the videos and we connect them, we give some type of attribution, we can show people that is a search result.
If it's visual for accessibility, if it's not transcribed or if there's no captions.
And Google's been making some changes. A long time ago, when we did local search for people, and we saw people would include their business and show a sign, and the sign was all text, so that Google couldn't OCR, optical character recognition, the text and read the address, and they didn't have the address on their page in text. They wouldn't know where the location of that business was. Now they're able to do some optical character recognition of text on images, and they're able to read signs. And I would still put text on a local page, but because I would be afraid that Google wouldn't catch the text in the sign.
Right. But see, Google might be able to figure that out, but a screen reader is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
So, which is why it fails WCAG. If you put text in an image, the only exception is the logo. You can do it there.
For a long time, there's metadata associated with JPEGs. So if you upload images to Flickr or something like that, Google can go through the images, read the metadata, and know what they're pictures of. So when Google's giving recommendations for places to take photographs, they can have a bunch of images from places like Flickr scanned already, read the metadata, and know where those places are, and be able to tell you, you want to go about 40 feet further to your right and take pictures pointing east from there, and you'll capture the waterfall really well.
I was just watching a video of, and I didn't realize this. It's audible wayfinding.
Yeah.
And which is actually like the law in Israel. I didn't even know that. We're not so big on it here in the United States, but apparently that's going to grow. And that is, what Bill was talking about, only audio. Like you can sort of get it in, like, I think in airports where you can hear them give directions audibly. I don't travel. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with this, but I would think that what Bill was talking about would help with that audible wayfinding as the technology gets better.
They're getting smarter about a lot of things. One of the things they have is a digital wave, a digital fingerprint, like a wave print. You listen to a commercial on the radio or on the TV. You've got your phone nearby, and your phone's listening to what's on the TV too. And it can understand what songs are playing. It might even, if you've got it turned on, it'll show you which song's playing and who's performing it.
Mm-hmm.
The microphone doesn't go off. They listen to everything.
That's our house. Yeah.
If you're talking about you need new curtains, you might at some point start seeing advertisements for curtains because you've been talking about curtains.
But are these part of the web core vitals, the performance part that I see? This
is something that they're not talking about much. It's like companies like Moz don't talk about VED codes, even though VED codes appear on every search results page from Google. You perform a query on Google for a certain topic, and for each of the search results, there will be a VED code that needs to be understood better. And it can tell you what type of response a query might be, a search result response might be, whether it's a local response or a image response or whatever. And when you see like a Mozcast at Moz or some of the other SEO tool makers, they're using those VED codes to understand what type of results are being shown and if they've changed around.
Could they ever be able to say, yes, this works with a screen reader, or no, it doesn't? And would that be a ranking factor?
I'm not sure that they would say whether or not it works with a screen reader, but third-party tool makers don't have anything to do with ranking factors.
I got a question for our accessibility expert then. Is there a published standard by which a screen reader supposedly designs their product?
That's ARIA.
So if ARIA, so I could see Google potentially at some point saying this is compliant with ARIA. Okay.
ARIA would help them understand a form a lot better.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah, but I could see them getting some advantage or providing some advantage to us as users by saying, yes, this is compliant with ARIA or not. Okay. And personally, I don't think that they're a ranking factor now, but I do think that their attention to accessibility and usability, to me, kind of tells me that we can expect that down the path someplace.
I disagree. I don't think you'll see anything that is a standard become a ranking factor.
No.
A standard means that everybody's capable of implementing it.
Well, I'm talking more about
implementing it poorly. They don't choose standards to be ranking factors.
And that could be the answer. I'm asked this because I get people are like, why should I, as a digital marketer, care about accessibility? Because they've got that SEO tunnel vision. If it's not going to help them with rank, they don't want to even hear about it.
Then
Some of
they're
the little
crappy
things you can do,
SEOs too.
like include alt text on pages. If you include alt text incorrectly, like you put a picture of a celebrity on a page, and instead of putting their name once in the alt text, you stuff the alt text with their name multiple times, you stand a good chance of getting penalized. And I've seen it happen. People have had featured snippets and other things like that taken away from them because they were stuffing alt text with people's names.
So they're still stuffing.
Yeah. You know how I answer that? I ask them, when was the last time Google bought anything on your website?
Yeah, that's me. Google doesn't have the credit card. It doesn't,
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
You sell to users, not Google's just an ends to a means.
Right.
And if you have that tunnel vision, you've lost the game already. Because even if you rank, you aren't going to do what the outcome that the customer is looking for, which is you can't take rankings to the bank. You can only take sales to the bank.
The document that Ammons and Gall published during the days of Panda, the 23 questions document, the guidelines of higher quality web pages, where he asked a number of questions like, are people willing to share their credit card number with you to purchase something from your website? Those types of questions are high quality questions. If people aren't buying things from you, if they're afraid to, that means you've got problems with your site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the trust and authority is out the window. So it's just interesting. I spent so much time in the usability world, and I'm still there, but I branched off into accessibility, and boy, talk about a brick wall. They just it stops until they get sued or receive a letter, and then they're all like, oh my god, what do I need to do? And I go and I run the audit, and there's barriers everywhere, and then there's like this lack of understanding of who accessibility is for, and that's what I
don't understand about it, Kim. It's not, set aside the SEO, the rankings, and whatnot. Just from the standpoint of a business decision, why would you allow your business to be at risk of either regulatory action or lawsuits? Especially when those lawsuits hit 6 and 7 figures. Mm-hmm. How many of our clients could even absorb that kind of a hit?
Right.
It's like systemic racism. People just ignore that shit until they're going to get sued or pay a fine or whatever. I mean, that's why they had to fine people to make buildings accessible. They had to actually make laws for it, when common sense would tell you that everybody should be able to enter a building, but
right. Yeah, it
doesn't go over very well.
And I don't like to use that approach when I'm, talking about it, that, it's the law, you're going to get sued. That's just a scare tactic, and I don't want to approach it that way. It's an ethical thing. It just, from the usability side alone, all the stuff you can do on the accessibility side helps with the usability side, which just makes it more like I would want to do business and refer that website that works.
Accessibility and usability are both competitive advantages that can mean
Yeah.
you get a lot more business than
Absolutely.
anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately or ideally the way you need to sell those things.
Right. But the other thing, and unfortunately, is because we have so many WordPress websites that fixing problems is really hard. You know,
I want to get into that deeper in regards to the update in March by Google, because doing that with WordPress is going to be a freaking nightmare. I just looked at it, and a site that I have that loads across the continent in less than 3 seconds had a performance rating of 35.
Wow.
35 out of 100.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because
why?
WordPress puts all the JavaScript and all the CSS and everything in the head, which means all that crap has to render before anything comes up on the page.
But that's easily fixed.
That is going to be a nightmare to fix. You're talking everybody will have to have a child theme, which, you know, and then when you take the JavaScript out of the head and put it where they want it, which is just before the HTML tag or just before the body tag, excuse me, that's gonna, and that also will cause the shifts that they also don't want to see. It's going to be a nightmare. When I looked at it yesterday, I just said, oh, geez. I looked at my brother and I said, well, we got about a month's worth of time here to fix this, and it's a huge job. Like,
I disagree,
I'll
Terry.
work with the networking guy and the whole 9 yards.
I disagree. First of all, my first comment is what WordPress user is not using a child theme, because that's just SEO 101.
Using what?
A child theme. Everybody that's running WordPress should be using a child theme for a number of different
How many
reasons.
do? I don't use it on every site unless I'm going to actually change something on the codex. There makes no sense
It's
to
the
use
first
a
thing I
child
do.
theme unless you're going to
Once
do
I
that.
install the core, the first thing I do is build a child, and I do all of my
I
edits
bet
there.
you
That's 'cause you know what
I
you're
bet you
doing.
that's the exception, not the rule.
Well, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be, is my point. But
Well-
but it's really not that hard to fix the shift. You're right. When you move that stuff down, it can create shift issues, which are going to be a core web vitals problem. But that's easy enough to fix. It's just you've got to have a child theme to do so many
Right.
things.
You have to have somebody who knows how to use WordPress. What if you're a Wix or one of those out of the box people?
Forget it.
Then you
just
deserve
ain't
everything
gonna
you
happen.
get.
That just ain't going to happen on Wix. Like, forget it.
That's for sure. They first of all, they would have to run an ad in the paper to find somebody that knows how.
Which is probably why they finally hired an SEO to try and put that platform, make it more SEO friendly.
Yeah.
They do? When did they do that, Doc? Maybe a couple of months ago.
It's been about a month and a half, 2 months. Yeah.
For
Okay.
Wix?
I got an email from them about 3-4 months ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Wait.
What, they
you got
wanted
an
you to
email
put your
from
site
Wix?
on it?
from Wix. Yeah.
Wait, we're emailing Bill Slosky for
Can
Wix.
you help us sell snow to Eskimos?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just put that right up there with GoDaddy hosting.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of problems for a lot of people, and they should be looking at it now, not wait until March. But I have a suspicion that ranking factor will come in the same way speed did. They said it'd come in on this day, but it didn't really happen for months afterwards. Not the full extent of it.
Mm-hmm.
Very probable.
Well, I
And-
know because I started when they said they were going to use it. I just laughed and said, "No way! I don't think so. This is a ploy to get people to put HTTPS on."
So Terry, I'm gonna challenge you. would you want an inferred link to your website or a regular link?
Well, it couldn't be to my see, because an inferred link is not really a link. It wouldn't be going to my website. It'd be mentioning my website. Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. But I'd still like a link.
Okay, so there was a patent by Navneet Panda called Referring Documents, which talked about understanding whether pages were the types of pages that tried to rank for a lot more things than they were optimized for.
Wow.
It was like how to knot a tie, how to tie a knot, all these queries that were similar to each other, and they tried to optimize for like 27 different versions of the same phrase. And they ended up getting penalized because they were all over the place. And it talked about inferred links, and it seems like I wrote a blog post about that Panda patent, and I had a couple of SEOs rewrite the blog post about the patents and get the inferred link language all wrong, thinking that an inferred link was supposed to be something beneficial.
Right.
They read the patent all wrong. And recently, we've been hearing a lot of talk about somebody who heard about that dispute because one of the SEOs who wrote about the inferred links being something positive wrote it on his website. And now he's saying inferred links are good.
Well, he also said it was going to replace the link graph, and I have a hard time believing that.
And his website says one thing, but if you listen to him on a podcast interview with Marie Haynes, he's saying, no, those are entity mentions, which is what I've been saying for 5 years.
Well, at least he got it right eventually.
Kind of tying back this JavaScript, everything's going to blow up in March. The overlays, the accessibility overlays and the plugins that people have been throwing on that are bad news, but it's JavaScript that makes them go.
Yeah.
So what does that do? I mean, is that going to be a problem for search down the pike? I mean, this is something people are paying thousands of dollars for that little bit of JavaScript.
So search engines are getting better incrementally, very slowly, about things like JavaScript. They're being able to understand it. If you go to like Google Maps and you look at the overlays they have on maps, some of those are implemented using JavaScript. And they're learning more about JavaScript, and they're including more about JavaScript in what programs like Googlebot understands.
How it might be affected is if it's in the head, right? With that, that is a no-no. That would definitely slow the page down loading.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because it would have to figure out all that crap before it could move on. Yeah, that would definitely be an issue.
Yeah, it's I mean, they're already in trouble. The accessibility overlays and the plugins, they're getting sued left, right, and center. But
of course,
there's major corporations that have already spent thousands of dollars for that stuff. And
then they find out they're in India and they can't sue. Sorry, that was a naughty
it's
thing.
It's going to be trouble. Definitely trouble.
Saying they don't have standing?
I missed that.
I said they don't have standing. They don't have legal authority to sue.
Who? Oh, you mean in India?
Well,
yeah, I think it would be pretty hard to sue somebody in India.
It's like trees trying to sue to enforce an environmental statute. Trees don't have standing, so they can't sue. Even though the purpose behind the law might be to protect the trees.
every day something comes out in your world that I have to try to make sense of and feed it into mine. And I'm just, it's crazy. And then trust me, I feel like my mind's going to explode.
Why are they using an overlay? Why don't they just build it into their template? And okay,
why don't they just build an accessible website? I mean, Hilton uses it, and it's just ridiculous. They can't afford to find people to build accessible websites, so they throw in these overlays. And there's so many articles, including those written by lawyers, about why this is a bad idea, and they do it anyway. Who would pay $45,000 or $4,000 or it was some stupid thing per month for something that you could hire an accessibility person to do, or a developer?
Well, after the first year, you would have already spent more on that than you would have for the lawyers. So
they didn't understand it in the first place.
No,
right.
There you go.
That's the problem.
There's at least one major enterprise software company who built a software that was supposed to be search engine optimization friendly. They misunderstood something Matt Cutts said in a video.
Wow.
And where he was talking about having like ampersands and question marks in the URL string. And he was saying search engines don't understand ampersands or question marks. So replace them with something that they could understand, like dashes. So
in 1994, they understood.
But that isn't what Matt said.
This was built in like 97, 98, and people still use it in some e-commerce websites. So
and that's not even what Matt said to begin with.
It's not what Matt said to begin with.
And if you replace the question mark with anything, it breaks the query. Because the question mark is actually what tells you these are key value pairs.
So they built a really bizarre, arcane search engine set, and they're a major company. They have AI platforms and stuff. You've heard of them, but you look at their e-commerce and it's like, what the hell is this crap?
Good Lord.
So
they don't make it easy to do e-commerce, and it should be.
Something new in your world, I think it's new, is, and I don't know what it's called. My memory, I'm getting old, but Lily was talking about it on Twitter. Bill, maybe you were part of that. The links that jump somewhere else on a page.
Skip links.
Yeah,
we call them anchored links.
Jump links, skip links, right at the top of pages.
Yeah. And, it sounded like it was the next best thing since the napkin. And my question, and Lily actually thought it was a good question, was from a screen reader or a tab key navigation perspective, once you leave
assisted technologies can read skip links and can use them as a table of contents to a page to allow them to go down to different parts of a page.
But if you're going tab,
using the assistive technology, using the screen reader or something. Yeah.
No, your keyboard. A browser and
you're using a keyboard as your table of contents.
No.
Going from link to link and skip link.
You have no mouse. So
you're using the keyboard shortcuts.
No, you're using your tab key.
That's the keyboard as a keyboard shortcut. It's a shortcut on your keyboard.
Okay.
It allows you to skip from link to link to link.
Right.
It treats those links as the table of contents.
Yeah, it's been around for decades.
Yeah.
Yes, but WCAG requirement is that it follows the DOM.
It does. It's part of HTML.
Mm-hmm.
So if it goes off into Timbuktu somewhere else on the page, This is different than like.
Oh, you mean where you're using an anchored link on a third-party site?
Yeah, like if you take them off.
I do that. I put anchored links in for that reason, so someone can link to a direct part. But what you have to watch with that, right, is it doesn't always land exactly on that. It depends where that anchored link is in the page. For instance, if it's at the end, it won't line up. It'll be down the page.
And I'll give you another example, Kim.
So
I just recently used some of those on one of my sites, and I was on my wife's tablet, checking it out, how it looked on a tablet. The anchor was placed in the H3 that I wanted it to land on, which should go to the top of your display, okay? On her tablet, it was about 6 lines down into that paragraph at the top of the page. You had to scroll up to see the H3. So you have to be very careful with layout, because if it's not looking at the media query right, or if the site is set up wrong, you're not going to land where you think you're going to land. And particularly on mobile devices, that can become an issue real quick.
So HTML is built on using hypertext, and hypertext has links in it. Links usually go from document to document, but sometimes there are links on the same page. And often they use something that's known as a named anchor. So you can link to a named anchor where you identify the anchor later on the page, and you tell it within the link what the anchor is. So it'll jump down to the anchor from your link when someone clicks on it.
Yep.
Which is exactly how a table of contents is built.
Right. Yeah, I need to test this more, because I know that there's success criteria for.
Now those named anchors may be treated as if they're headings by a search engine, which can impact passage rating.
Yep.
So context is understood for a passage on a page by the headings above it, but can also be understood by an anchor text that might link to it.
Taking context from where the link came from.
Right. So that process has been around for a while, and they're trying to use it. They're trying to work it into how things like SEO work.
Yeah, I definitely want to test it on a screen reader.
That's why it's good to put those on your page on important parts that people may want to link to. If you put those in, they can link directly to the part of the article that they want their user to see, rather than them finding it through a whole post.
Right. Mark Pilgrim, who now works for Google, or did work for Google for a while, wrote a number of HTML type documents, accessibility and Python. No, it was an HTML5 and accessibility article also, where he had named anchors like that. And the whole article was filled with named anchors. And there's multiple pages of named anchor type stuff. And people could link directly to different sections because they're all built using named anchors.
Can you do that from link to link?
You mean with
tabbing?
The tabbing that you're talking about, can you do that with links?
That's the whole point. Is it
the assistive technology can allow movement from link to link? Yes.
Oh, okay. Then
it follows the DOM now.
A named anchor is just another type of link. It even has the href in it.
It's a type of
reading order, and it's supposed to follow, left to right, the way, like, it's something that I test for. I do in the audits all the time. And if the reading order suddenly goes kaplooey, that fails a WCAG success criteria. And in fact, some people try to force the link to go somewhere out of order, and that's something that I have to say, well, you can't do that. So that's why I was wondering, like, it sounds like a conflict to me, but I haven't had a chance to test it.
Well, it sounds like a conflict in the way some people are using it.
Yeah,
If you
that
don't
was the
have a mouse-
implementation, not the technology.
Right. But if you don't have a mouse, like, or your only way to navigate something is holding a pencil in your mouth, and you're hitting a keyboard and you're hitting the tab button, there's nothing, it goes left to right, start to
Yeah,
the
it
top,
follows them almost like the old search engines did. It follows the HTML on the page.
Exactly. So if it suddenly goes off into Neverland, jumps somewhere unexpected without a warning, it's confusing, especially if the person has cognitive issues or all kinds of stuff.
Right.
ADD. So this is where the accessibility side, I'm like, wait a minute. We already have a best practice where if there's a link on your page and it takes the user off the website, you can put hidden text in ARIA for the screen reader saying, hey, you're reading along, you're listening to this. This link's going to take you off site. Because unless you've got that in there in ARIA, they have no warning. But a visual user usually can tell, that there's more sometimes.
Hopefully.
But, yeah,
we can hope.
Yes, sometimes, yeah.
So this is like, the scope of thinking now is so much different when you're taking more types of people, and it is not just blind people, it's the mental, the all kinds of stuff, which is why I was asking. When I was reading that, I thought, something about that's not feeling right.
So what you're saying is you'd have to add ARIA to the link so people know that this is going to take you off the page or to a lower spot in the page out of order.
Right. Right.
And then WCAG is going to pass it, right?
It stands a better chance of it, yeah, whether it meets a success criteria or a best practice. Not everything is, you fail at
one less hoop to jump through.
Right.
That's the way it sounds like to me. I would hate doing that kind of stuff.
There's what I thought I knew. Nah, I'm still learning.
But the bar for that has risen so much in just the last couple of years with these laws, right?
And with people working from home and doing like online courses, students, people with, a lot of cognitive stuff that we just weren't thinking about, and the population is getting older, and there's just, we're noticing more, we're learning more about how they use the web and taking that information and changing it.
And you're running into more people with cognitive problems.
Yeah.
I don't know. They seem to seek me out, Bill. I'm
already told myself.
Yeah. Hey, I might have to bring you in to test some stuff, Bill. But you're
now I'm recovering, so
you are.
It might be late. Yeah.
Freaking amazing how well you're doing. So
you do a little bit every day. You do a little bit more. You work a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I'm adding 2 minutes a day to the exercise bike. I'm working on my exercises from the hospital. You just keep it up.
Do you have to go
probably a lot of things you'll never take for granted again, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what were you saying, Kim?
Do you have to go to the hospital every day? Is this PT every day or?
No. They gave me rehab every day. I was seeing a physical therapist and an occupational therapist, a speech therapist who was copying stuff straight from a book and was saying, you got all this stuff already. You understand it. I'll have to get a better book.
I should love it when they tell you that. Yeah.
So the physical therapists were all occupied by how my center of balance was disturbed. And they kept on getting me to do stuff that forced my center of balance to get better, but made me fall, or didn't make me fall, but came close to making me fall, which really doesn't help anything.
Yeah. I could fall by myself. Get out of here.
They had parallel bars, and I could walk up and down the center of the parallel bars and walk sideways and all that. And I should have just been doing that all day.
And what's their billable rate per hour?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm still waiting to see if I have a copay on that.
Crazy. Well, I'm impressed. So I see
very
you posted on
relieved.
Twitter, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I'm very relieved too, because I've had a lot of friends that have had strokes that couldn't get into a chair without assistance for a year and a half, 2 years. Couldn't talk, couldn't use their entire left side for 6 or 8 months. So really, not what you want to hear, I'm sure, buddy. But you got off very, very lightly, considering what it could have been.
What I experience is comparatively rare. It happens to less than 10% of people. It's a cognitive issue that only affects the center of balance. Only affects it makes me think right is too much right. So I tilt too heavily on the right, or I was. Now I'm walking. I'm walking around my house. I'm getting from door to door. I'm catching the phone when it's raining. I'm moving much better. I'm not moving as well as I could when I was 10 years old.
Me neither.
Yeah, I could say the same thing.
I think that's a safe statement for all of us there, Billy.
So I went and visited the neurologist on Monday, and he said, okay, walk up and down the hall for me. So I said, okay, here you go. I left my cane in my chair, and I walked up and down the hall. And he said, it's really good.
That's very good. That'll be $1,200, please.
Right. Yep.
So I was doing that with the parallel bars. There's a mirror at the end of parallel bars. So I was watching myself walking towards the mirror, noticing I was tilting to the right. I was leaning to the right.
Interesting.
So now I'm not leaning to the right anymore. When I go for something in the refrigerator or something in the kitchen, I'm cooking something, I'm not tilting to the right anymore. So that's sort of gone.
Good.
That's gotten better.
Good. Well, you scared the crap out of everybody, so I'm really happy that you're doing better. Love, Mom.
It's okay. They scare you in the hospital pretty well too.
Oh yeah, you were in the hospital during COVID, and
they're watching every movement you make and grading it.
Oh wow.
It's like the physical therapist said, okay, let's do this test now. I said, okay, what are the parts of it? This is the one you've been doing all week. So I don't know what the test is because you never told me it was a test. You just graded me on it, but you didn't tell me. So I'm supposed to turn around in a circle now.
Yeah.
Okay, here you go. Oh, you get a 4 for this one. So, okay, so how can I get a 5? You just get a 5.
My grandmother had a stroke when she was, I think she was 72, and she lost the control of her entire left side, arm, leg, hand, eye, everything.
Yeah.
And it lasted like a year of therapy before she regained maybe 60, 70%.
Yeah.
But while she was in the hospital, they got her on a walker to where she could go from her bed. She's in a semi-private room. She'd go from her bed to the restroom without assistance unless she asked for assistance.
Yeah.
And so they had her wearing a life alert thing around her neck. So if she got in trouble, all she had to do is hit the button and the nurse would come running to help her out. So the nurse came by, saw her getting off the bed to her walker, heading for the restroom, Well, the nurse went on down the hallway to do something, and all of a sudden they hear the alarm for her room. 2 or 3 of them go running down there. They ran into the restroom and opened the door, and she's sitting there on the throne. And she tells them, and listen to my grandmother tell the story. It was hilarious. She says, "Honey, I've been learning to wipe my butt for 73 years with my right hand. I have never had to wipe my butt with my left hand, and now all of a sudden I don't have anything but a left hand. Can one of you young ladies help me out?"
Wow.
So they're the same kind of thing. They had the therapist would come into her room and have her do certain movements and exercises and grade her.
Yeah.
And asked her, had she learned to wipe herself with her left hand yet? And she said, "Hell, honey, like I told the nurse the other day, 73 years, I haven't been able to learn how to drink coffee with my left hand. I'm not even I don't have long enough to worry about training myself to wipe my butt. That's what I got y'all for."
So I used to smoke. I quit smoking about 7 years ago. So last time I got medical evaluation, they took x-rays of my lungs, and they found out that I have a couple of small holes in my lungs. And so at the hospital, they also gave me the x-ray test, and they noticed the holes. They started prescribing medication for these holes in my lungs, which were causing hiccups. I'd hiccup maybe 10 times a day, but they needed to make sure they controlled the hiccups. So they gave me, and that was supposedly nausea. So they gave me an anti-nausea medication that was making me sick to my stomach.
Vicious circle.
So I took the nausea medication. One day I got sick to my stomach. I said, "I don't want to take this anymore." They gave it to me the next day, and I threw up all over the place, my dinner. And I said, "I'm not taking this anymore." They said, "Okay, we can prescribe something different." So they gave me another medication that it made the hiccups louder. It made them more noticeable. So I'm lying awake at 2:30 in the morning listening to myself hiccup. And I'm going on for 2 or 3 hours.
God.
It's like usually the hiccups last about 10 times and then they're gone. So I said, "Okay, new rule. Whatever that medication you gave me for the hiccups were yesterday, stop. I'm not taking it anymore."
Good for you.
They said, "But we're supposed to fix you."
Yeah, they get really upset.
Stop giving me the medication that's crap.
Yeah.
They get really upset when a patient asserts themselves too.
That would be me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will tell them that what they're doing isn't helping anything.
Right.
And it's really bad when they're giving you something to help something and it's just making it worse. I'm like, I think that's where a lot of people get the feeling that they're just nothing but a guinea pig.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand a doctor thinks they're supposed to be there to help you. And stopping hiccups is something doctors think they should be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're hiccuping 10 times a day and it stops and you're not feeling sicker and you're able to sleep and you're able to do exercises and so on, let me hiccup.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with hiccuping 10 times a day.
My husband taught the kids how to mentally stop the hiccups.
I still am not taking medication for hiccups. I still have holes in my lungs. I still hiccup 10 times a day. At times I have no control over. I haven't hiccuped yet today. It hasn't distracted me in the least.
Yep.
I don't care.
Right.
And a neurologist can go get his PhD all over again, learn about the hiccups, but he's not going to give me any more pills.
Right. Yeah, the side effects for drugs. Ugh. Yeah.
That's why I don't go to doctors.
I regret having smoked all those years, but I can live with some hiccups.
Yeah. I think your body will continue to heal too, right? You know.
I think when I stopped smoking, my breathing became clearer over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not quite the same as when I had never smoked, but it's closer. It's a lot closer to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm riding an exercise bike 40 minutes a day. I'm not breathing heavily after doing that.
Right. Yeah, I think that stuff helps. I think it also takes like 10 years, from what I heard, for the lungs to completely heal.
But they'll never completely heal. You always
No.
have small holes in your lungs and things like that.
Lung tissue cannot, damaged cilia in the lungs will never grow back.
Wow.
Oh, it doesn't regenerate?
No. Lung tissue, kidneys can to a degree, the liver can to a very small degree, lungs will not. The heart can, okay? You could actually develop a hole in a valve that will heal itself with time, okay? But the lungs cannot regrow.
The same supposedly is true of nerves, but nerves do slightly regenerate in people. In amphibians, they're much better. It's like alligators regrow legs. They regrow tails.
Mm.
So Terry gave us a bunch of questions to look at. Terry, would you recommend a pyramid site structure or a flat site structure?
Oh, definitely not flat. The guy who wonders why his ranking went down when he added 1,000 links to the homepage. Yeah, well, that shouldn't have been a tough one to figure out, I would think.
I'm a believer in creating hierarchies in site structures.
Yeah, I use what we used to call hub and spoke design. Hubs of information. So a category has everything about it. Subcategories, brands, questions, everything on one page, linking to everything. Because my ultimate goal is no more than 3 clicks to any page on the website. That the navigation should be able to do that.
You can do that with an HTML sitemap, right?
Never had one on a site. Sorry, never saw the need to. Because with a proper hub structure, it does the exact thing with better context.
You use XML sitemaps?
Of course.
I haven't used a sitemap in years.
You see less and less of them too. But because in the old days, those sitemaps, HTML sitemaps, were thought to help with indexing of websites, where to me it just pushed everything one level down from the homepage, right?
Well, they do help with indexing sitemaps. They do help when you have a Google bot trying to find all the pages on your site. XML sitemap is a machine readable only sitemap. So you can Google bot grabbing a text file that has all these URLs that need to be crawled and understood where they're at on your site. It doesn't need to be accessible. It just needs to be something that a robot can grab quickly. Index pages from your site from. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need both. All you really need is one.
You can have both. You can have both, and it's quite likely that a crawler that goes from link to link to link, even in the next HTML sitemap, will crawl your site quicker than an XML sitemap. Because an XML sitemap comes along and it says, oh, here's a text file with URLs in it. Let me grab that and let me visit those pages in the next month or so. And it might schedule them a month apart. Where HTML sitemap will say, oh, here are a bunch of links. Let me crawl those and see if they're really at where they're at.
Well, for me, HTML sitemaps were it was different back in the day when they were real popular, because I remember Google saying they only follow about 50 links on a page.
They're
So
still
there was
really they're still really popular.
The HTML one
okay.
or the XML?
The HTML ones.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't seen
They're
one
more
in a while.
popular than the XML ones.
Huh. Because I used to always have an HTML one. And then I could tell people just weren't doing it anymore.
It's quite likely that a robot, if you use log files from a website and you look and see which pages are actually being crawled by which sites, you can get the sites that a Googlebot might be using, the URLs for Googlebot, and identify when Googlebot's on your pages, following a HTML sitemap.
I might have to go back and do that again. Yeah,
So most people don't use log files anymore, but you can usually get your host to save log files for you, and people can use a log file crawler. Like Screaming Frog has a log file crawler, and it can identify which robots have visited which pages on your site.
That lower cost hosting, it's real hard to get those logs. The more you pay, the more likely you are to get them.
I've used sites that you paid $3, $4 a month, and you're able to get log files.
Yeah, SiteGround, for instance, provides them. You don't even have to request them. I mean, there's links for them to download your log files right in the cPanel. Well, they just changed it at SiteGround. They no longer call it a cPanel. I forget what their new name for it is, and it's a different technology, but it serves the same end. But they're still there. And, I mean, if you go to some of the IEG sites, I bet you won't be able to get them without being charged extra, if at all.
And if you work with really large sites, they don't know, but you actually grab the log files for those sites, and you can tell which search engines are crawling their sites. And those large sites have no idea that those search engines are crawling their sites. They think they're so big that they're immune from that the search engines just automatically know what's on their pages. And now the search engines crawl their sites, look at them, look at what's on them, and index it.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
Is there a limit to how many links can be on a page?
No.
Not anymore.
At one point in time, Matt Cutts used to say, don't have more than 100 links on a site. And Moz used to have a spam score on your page, where if you had more than 100 links on your site, you would get the spam score. And then Matt came out and said, we made a mistake. We said you don't want to have more than 100 links on your site. That was more a usability thing than an SEO thing.
Yep.
What we meant was a crawler might have trouble if you've got too many links on your page. It might have difficulty following all those links. You're not going to rank any worse because you've got all those links.
Okay.
If your page navigation has so many links that you're not ranking high for all your pages, that could be a separate problem.
Yeah, because I audit foodie sites, for example.
Yeah.
And the recipes, when I run them through the screen reader, it will say blah 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 page of 89 links, and I'm like, oh my god. And
remember they used to have the Internet Explorer PageRank toolbar?
Yes.
And you used to visit New York Times, www.nytimes.com, and it was a PageRank 9. And you visit New York Times, nytimes.com without the www, and it was PageRank 7.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't automatically redirect to the www. So it was still PageRank 7. So that was a good. That's a good SEO tool to know that there's a difference between a www and a non-www page.
Geez, I forgot about that.
That's why you canonicalize your protocols.
And that's why you redirect. So they're all in the same subdomain.
Canonicalize. I like big words.
Well, canonicalize means make it the same page.
Yeah.
But saying www means make it www. So I'm more precise. So they were messing up by having the www and the non-www and having them be different things. They weren't the same page, even though they had the same content on them.
5-6 days ago, I came across a blog post that I saw somebody link to.
Yeah.
And in this blog post, this guy was explaining the www. A lot of people don't understand when they see a www URL that there's a subdomain there. And then he went on to explain that in www.google.com, Google is a subdomain of www.
What? It's not. It's a protocol.
So
it is a
Google,
subdomain.
Google is the domain. www
sub.
is the subdomain.
Yeah.
So back when they were developing the domain process, they said, okay, we're going to have some other subdomains. We're going to have like gopher.google.com. We're going to have mailto.google.com. So we're going to have all these subdomains that are going to be used for different things. One is going to be used for people to get emails. So that'll be the email.google.com. One's going to be for people to use Gopher to get to. So that'll be the gopher.google.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the wwws, you had people running redirect servers. So you'd have a www1, www2, www3. And you'd potentially have lots of different servers that people could get redirected to when one got too busy. And they were actually different servers.
For load balancing.
Right.
Okay. If you have a domain, say you're a realtor.
Yeah.
I'm actually working on a site for somebody. This just occurred to me. This particular real estate franchise is not allowing them to have their own personal websites. I mean, you sort of can, but why bother when they want them to switch over to the main realtor? So it's like her name dot realestatewebsite.com. And every realtor has to have that set up.
Their own portal into the site, into the domain.
Yeah.
But when they go to the main domain where the houses are sold, they have one domain. It no longer has a name.
Right. It's not her name. It's owned. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of her name, but it's under that brand.
Franchise.
It's a subdomain.
Yeah. And it's
so under Google's Blogspot, people used to have separate subdomains. So it was whatever letters.blogspot.com.
Yeah.
And they were all on Blogspot. It's why you don't have a domain authority metric. Even though Moz might like a domain authority metric, you have some sites that are separate sites when they're at different subdomains. So they're all the same main domain.
So that helps the franchise, but it doesn't.
That's right.
I can't even rank for her name.
And think of this. If you ever decide to leave the franchise, all that stuff that was on their website is gone.
Point.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. I'm going to be having a talk with her about that because
You have Angel Fire doing the same thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And
WordPress.
And WordPress.com does that.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel really bad. I mean, it wasn't like she's losing her name, which was her domain. And I don't know. They're also like, oh, yeah, you have to make this new website that we're making for you. It has to be accessible. And it's not. the stuff that they're making them use isn't accessible. That's a whole nother story.
Well, everybody, it's at the top of the hour. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
It's good to have you here.
Have a good one.
It's good to have you all back this week.
And right back at you.
Thanks. Take care now.
Freezing cold and get some horses.
Have fun. Night now. Thanks.